As we work to care for ourselves and appreciate our own worth, we all deserve a touch of elegance or even luxury from time to time. Yet, treating ourselves can often feel like an indulgence we should avoid. And that's why I was delighted to discover Quince, a brand that marries luxury with affordability. Imagine slipping into a 100% Mongolian cashmere sweater for just $50, or dressing up in washable silk tops and dresses. They also have organic cotton sweaters and even 14-karat gold jewelry. And the best part is that all items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. How do they do it? Well, Quince partners directly with top factories, eliminating costly middlemen, and passes those savings right back to us. Plus, they only work with factories that uphold safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices using premium materials. I personally love their silk blouses and cashmere sweaters. They've become staples in my own wardrobe, and I just feel so confident and comfortable and well cared for when I'm wearing them. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Visit quince.com/bestofyou for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/bestofyou to enjoy free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/bestofyou. I am so excited about Organifi Glow. It's a delicious raspberry lemonade blend that hydrates the skin, moisturizes, and supports your body's natural collagen production and elasticity. Your best complexion starts on the inside. Drink this vegan superfood blend daily to help promote a radiant, refreshed look. Plus, it's rich in antioxidants to fight wrinkle-causing free radicals. Organifi has a ton of delicious Organifi blends you can try. Just add to water, stir with a spoon, and enjoy any time for more energy, nutrition, hormone balance, and peace of mind. They're a great way to jumpstart your morning, energize your afternoon, or nourish your evening in a healthy way without all the sugar. And the best part is that you can experience Organifi's high-quality superfoods without breaking the bank, with a price that works out to less than $3 a day. Head over to www.organifi.com/bestofyou and use code bestofyou for 20% off your entire order. That's www.organifi.com/bestofyou. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Alison, and I'm so glad you're here to discover what brings out the best of you. This podcast is all about breaking free from painful patterns, mending the past, and discovering our true selves in God. I can't wait to get started as we learn together how to become the best version of who we are with God's help. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Best of You podcast. I'm so glad you're here with me this week. Today we're exploring a topic that deeply affects so many people, yet it so often remains cloaked in quiet struggle. It's the complex world of intimacy within Christian marriages, particularly the misconceptions around sex. Now, on the podcast, we focus on holistic mental health, which encompasses our hearts, our minds, our spirits, and our physical beings. And we understand that a calm and clear and well cared for nervous system not only influences our mental and emotional and spiritual health, but also our physical health, including our sexual health. And sexual intimacy is where the emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical aspects of ourselves converge. It's such an important component of how God made us. And yet, there are just so many times that couples, and women in particular, don't experience sex as fun or romantic, or even as a way to feel more connected to the person they love most in the world. Sam Jolman, who's a past guest on the podcast, writes in his book, The Sex Talk You Never Got. He says it this way: sex isn't just a bodily function or even a need. It's a story, and it's laced with meaning. And he says it's vital that couples learn how to write a better sex story, one that increases connection and passion and intimacy. And I love this phrase that he borrows from Emily Nagoski, where she calls this adding more to the plot. And I just love this way of viewing sex as a narrative, as a story, rather than just an act. And we can write different chapters to our stories, and we can add more to the plot. And in many ways, a woman's voice and understanding of this story has often been overlooked, especially in Christian faith communities. Women's experiences with sex can be complex, not only because of the way God designed us, but also because many women, in fact, research would suggest a third of all women, 1 in 3 of all women, have had a past experience of sexual abuse or pain. And that's why it's so important to uncover the beauty and significance and deeper longing and voice of a woman's sexual story. And that's why I'm so excited to welcome a very special guest, Sheila Wray Gregoire. Sheila's been a pioneer in bringing a woman's voice into the conversation about Christian sex. I first learned about Sheila's work at a retreat for Christian women authors. Her best-selling book, The Great Sex Rescue, was repeatedly recommended as a vital resource. And as a clinician who has primarily worked with women, I've struggled to find literature that honors and highlights a female's perspective within a Christian context, which is why Sheila's work is so groundbreaking. She conducted a profound survey that launched this pivotal book. It's a survey that involved over 20,000 Christian women, and it unearthed some startling truths about the impact of certain teachings on marital and sexual satisfaction, challenging and reshaping some of the harmful narratives that have not fully recognized a woman's perspective, especially within Christian faith communities. And today we're going to discuss those findings, as well as some really beautiful reframes about how Jesus respected, valued, and honored women. Sheila is a popular speaker, marriage blogger, and award-winning author of 7 books, including The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex, She Deserves Better, and The Great Sex Rescue. And she also has a brand new book out. It's written with her husband, called The Marriage You Want, Moving Beyond Stereotypes for a Relationship Built on Scripture, New Data, and Emotional Health. I'm thrilled to bring you my conversation with Sheila Wray Gregoire. I'm just thrilled to have you here today. I first learned about you. I was at a retreat. It was Christian women authors, and it was right at the tail end of the pandemic. It was the first time we were all meeting. And of course, as with Christian women, the topic of sex would come up. I was the resident therapist. I wasn't there as a therapist, but people always ask me for book recommendations, Sheila, and I just struggle. As a Christian clinician, I think really highly of Esther Perel's work. I think Emily Nagoski is doing really good work. And at the same time, they don't come from a Christian worldview, so that can be an obstacle for some people. And so I was asking them, and everybody was saying, you've got to get a hold of The Great Sex Rescue. So that's how I first learned of you. So grateful for what you're doing to try to debunk some of the unfortunate messages about sex, especially in evangelical churches, and try to cast a new vision. I'd love to start today just by you telling us a little bit about this survey that you did. You surveyed over 20,000 Christian women that served as sort of the impetus for the book. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, let me tell you how we got started. So I had been blogging about sex and marriage for about a decade, and I have 2 master's degrees, a degree in sociology. I was a researcher, but I stayed home with my kids. So I did a lot of writing from home. And as they were teenagers, I started speaking a lot, and I was doing marriage conferences, and we were producing all of this material. I was writing The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex, or what 31 Days to Great Sex. But the one thing I didn't do was read other people's books. And I just figured they love Jesus, I love Jesus. We're all saying the same thing. But I was really afraid of plagiarizing, and so I didn't want to read anyone else's stuff. And then one day I was on Twitter, it was called Twitter back then, and people were fighting about whether they needed love or respect, referring to Emerson Eggerich's best-selling book, Love and Respect. And I thought, I have that book, and I've never read it. This is an amazing way to procrastinate, because I just didn't want to work that day. And so for the very first time, I went and I grabbed someone else's book, and I turned to the sex chapter, and it was like a nuclear bomb went off in my living room. Because I read things like, if your husband is typical, he has a need that you don't have. And that need was for physical release. And if he doesn't get physical release, he'll come under satanic attack. And why would you deprive him of something which takes so little time? There was like 15 O's there in the book, and makes him so happy.
So sort of guilting women into having sex, shaming women into having sex, which is so helpful.
And I also don't know why you would brag about it taking so little time, but whatever. So he's saying this, and I called my team, and my daughter was working for me at the time, and she had a psychology degree where she had done a lot of work on survey development. And Joanna Sawatsky, a family friend, was working for me when she was home with her baby, and she was a statistician with a master's degree in epidemiology. And we were like, we got to do something. If this is what is being said to women, how is that impacting people? Like, what is this doing? And so we decided to do what we hoped would become the biggest survey that's ever been done of evangelical women, and it was. So we asked women to rate their marital and sexual satisfaction using some validated question sets, and then we just listed a whole bunch of different beliefs, and we said, hey, have you ever been taught this, or did you ever believe it? And from that, we were able to see how did certain beliefs impact marital and sexual outcomes.
Wow. Can you tell us some of your key findings, both about the beliefs and the impact of those beliefs?
Yeah, so I like to say we had 6 big findings, and I'll tell you the numbers ones first because those are fun. They're depressing, but they're fun. So first, the number 47, very, very important number, and that's our orgasm gap. So 95% of men almost always or always reach orgasm in a given sexual encounter compared to just 48% of women. So we have a 47-point orgasm gap in the evangelical church. And we also have an incidence rate of sexual pain disorders of about 23%.
Mm.
And evangelical women suffer from sexual pain at least twice the rate of the general population. And we already knew that going into the survey. I'd already written a lot about sexual pain because that was part of my story too. And one thing we were specifically looking at in our survey was why. What is correlated with sexual pain? And so we managed to identify 4 big teachings. There were actually more, but we talked about 4 of them in the Great Sex Rescue that really hurt women.
Can you tell us what they are, the 4 big teachings?
Sure. Okay, we'll start with the big one. And I like to think of this one as like the one ring to rule them all in Lord of the Rings terminology. Like I think everything kind of goes back to this one. But it's the idea that a woman is obligated to give her husband sex when he wants it. So we called that the obligation sex message. And roughly 40% of women said they believed that going into marriage. And when they got married believing that, their chance of experiencing sexual pain increased to almost the same statistical effect as if they'd been abused.
Wow.
Yeah. So our bodies interpret obligation as trauma.
It makes so much sense. And I think it's something like a third of all women have experienced some sort of sexual trauma, sexual abuse. So you're adding that layer of already women are struggling with not having had consent on some level. And then suddenly you're being told to have sex on demand. And so you're just adding trauma to trauma. And that's what I would hear from Christian women. Man, I love my husband. I want to be in a sexually fulfilling relationship. What's wrong with me? And so you're kind of uncovering that. Like, let's say best case scenario, you're going into marriage with a wonderful man, but you are in that category of women who's had some really hard or traumatic sexual encounter prior to marriage. And that hasn't been necessarily healed because we don't talk about sex well. And so even with the best of men, you're going to struggle a little bit. You're going to take that into marriage. And then when you add on these messages that you were unpacking, it just puts so much burden on women.
It really does. And that obligation sex message hurts you even if you haven't been a victim of abuse and even if your husband is good. And that's what's so key is like, it's not always about the marriage dynamics. It's the fact that these terrible things that we grew up believing really hurt us because they made sex seem like a threat. And that's not what God intends, right? Like, I think Genesis 4 verse 1 is a super funny verse. It says Adam knew his wife Eve and they conceived a son. And it's so easy to read that. I remember in junior high reading that and thinking like God's just embarrassed of saying the real word. But what if that's not what's going on? What if God was serious? Because the root for to know there is the same root when David says, search me and know me, O God, right? So sex is supposed to be this deep knowing. It's supposed to be like, I am bringing everything that I am to the bedroom and you're bringing everything you are. And we're going to totally know each other. Like we're naked in many ways, not just physically. But obligation tells a woman, you don't matter. What you want, what you need is irrelevant compared to what he wants. So now sex isn't a knowing, it's an owing. It's an erasing of you as a person. And that's a traumatic thing.
Yeah, it is. I love my time at home from 5 to 9. It's the time when I get to rest and unwind and decompress, and Cozy Earth products are designed to transform your 5 to 9, the time that matters most, into the coziest sanctuary. As soon as I dive into my Cozy Earth bamboo long sleeve pajama set, I can just feel my body start to relax. And then Cozy Earth's bamboo sheet set, these sheets are buttery soft, they're temperature regulating, and they are just like getting 5-star comfort in my own bedroom each night. Luxury truly starts where you rest. You can experience these transformations risk-free with a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty on all Cozy Earth bedding and bath products. You'll love them, or you have the option to send them back, but I am confident you won't want to. Luxury shouldn't be out of reach. Visit CozyEarth.com and use my exclusive code BESTOFYOU for 40% off best-selling sheets, towels, pajamas, and more. And if you get a post-purchase survey, let them know you heard about Cozy Earth right here at the Best of You podcast. Sanctuary awaits at Cozy Earth, where your comfort is transformed into luxury every single day. In my years of being a therapist, one of the lessons I've learned is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute hour or even from typical weekly counseling sessions. This is why some people can go to couples counseling for months or even years and never really get anywhere or make any progress. This is why I'm such a believer in the intensive counseling process at Restoring the Soul in Colorado. Restoring the Soul was created by Michael Cusick to help couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Michael and his extraordinary team of therapists know that sometimes you just can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience a needed breakthrough. For over 20 years, Restoring the Soul has helped couples and individuals transform their relationships and their lives. So if you're looking to get out of the rut you're in but can't wait months or years, contact Restoring the Soul today at www.restoringthesoul.com and learn how their intensive counseling process can jumpstart your journey or launch you to the place you want to be. And as a special gift just for the Best of You podcast listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/bestofyou to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unresolved Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationship. That's www.restoringthesoul.com/bestofyou. What are some of the other lies that you uncovered through your survey?
There's one that's very closely related, that a wife should have frequent sex with her husband to keep him from watching pornography. So if your husband watches porn, it's your fault because you're not giving him good enough sex, which is so wrong. And also, it makes sex into something coercive, because if you have to have sex to stop something bad from happening, then that's coercion. Another one would be, and this is related to what we believed as teenagers, that boys are going to push your sexual boundaries, and so you need to be the gatekeeper. And when girls grew up having to be the gatekeeper, they learned that you had to separate what your body is feeling from what your mind is feeling. And now it's very difficult to inhabit your body when you're having sex.
I thought that was so fascinating how you named that in the book, that just that message alone, putting that burden, the locus of responsibility in a woman's body, does something to divide her mind from her body, which you can't just magically repair once you're ready to go all the way, quote unquote. It makes so much sense, right? That's not the way we're designed. We are whole body beings. And so if we've been conditioned to disrupt those natural feelings, there's just so many mixed messages that are kind of constantly firing in the nervous system.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's why that particular message was highly correlated with arousal problems. Once you're married, highly correlated with orgasm problems. Just her body just didn't work. Mindfulness just was too difficult.
So on that note, I've heard you say, and I just thought this was so interesting, wait until you're married to have sex, but don't have sex until you're aroused. Figure out the arousal piece first. What do you mean by that?
Oh gosh, we've got some more stats coming on this in our new marriage book, The Marriage You Want. And it is so depressing. But when you look at the first time a couple has sex, if they waited for the wedding, just taking that subgroup of the survey respondents. And then we asked, hey, did you bring her to orgasm before you tried intercourse? Or did you bring him to orgasm before you tried intercourse? Well, we were far more likely to bring him to orgasm. Okay, so women are helping him with orgasm first, but not helping her. And then when you say, okay, who actually did reach orgasm in your first sexual encounter? It's like, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's like 87% of men did versus, 11% of women, maybe. I mean, it's just incredible when you look at how lopsided our first sexual encounters are. And there was a really neat study out of the University of Toronto last year, I think 2022, which found that your sexual debut, so the first time you have consensual sex that involves intercourse, if she reaches orgasm in some way, her libido is really likely to be basically the same as her spouse's or her partner's. But if she doesn't, then her libido is more likely to be lower. So our sexual debut matters. And so think about all of these Christian couples having sex for the first time, not caring about her pleasure at all. Because when you wait for the wedding, it's this big thing. Oh, we finally get to have intercourse. And so you have intercourse and you weren't waiting for her arousal. It didn't flow organically from something you were doing. And we're just doing it backwards. And I'm not saying that people should have sex before the wedding, but think about what happens when like a 17-year-old has sex by accident. They weren't planning on having sex, but they were making out for 3 hours. And, and then
it flows.
They get more and more excited and it happens. And that is what is supposed to happen. There's supposed to be this sexual response cycle. Now, not when you're 17, but that's the way your body is supposed to work. But what do? We get married and then, now we finally get to have intercourse. So you don't do any of the other stuff. You don't know what you're doing. You feel embarrassed.
You've kind of shut it off. And even just psychologically, we live in a culture where we have to be preparing our girls and boys for healthy sexuality. It's not enough either to give them the abstinence message that I got in the 80s or the purity culture stuff, obviously, which got so toxic in the 90s and 2000s. It's delicate to talk about it, but I love that you're just looking at the facts. Here are the facts.
Yeah.
Here's what's happening for women. One of the things, Sheila, I really appreciate that you're trying to do is amplify the voices of women and women's experience and to try to close that gap. You do these reframes and you start off the book. You really are trying to reframe, emphasizing the mutuality of sex. I mean, it sounds so simple when I say it, but it's actually a profound reframe. Sex was designed to feel good for both people. Both people in a marriage desire sex. Instead of this kind of guys want it, girls don't, you're really trying to reframe that messaging. Tell me why that's so important for women.
Well, think about what we have normally heard over and over again in almost all of our marriage bestsellers, sex bestsellers. It's that men have needs. Men have sexual needs. And women need to meet them. We see that in For Women Only. We see it in His Needs, Her Needs. We see it in Love and Respect. Sex is a need that men have, not a need that women have. And it's called that. It's called a need. God created men with these needs. And so it is your job to meet them. And that is so often the message that we get about sex, that it's not about our autonomy. It's not about our desire. It's just about the man using the woman's body to meet his needs. And that's not an intimate thing. That is a very shallow thing. And when you talk about sex that way, I'm amazed that we then berate women for having no libido, because what do we expect? If you tell women their whole lives, hey, men have these needs that you need to meet, why would any woman get excited by that? I mean, Every Man's Battle, that book series sold 4 million copies. It literally called women the methadone for their husband's sex addictions. And do they think that this is going to excite women, that this is going to make women want to have sex?
It's so dishonoring to both men and women. And you say that in the book. It's so one-dimensional. It's such a caricature of men. It's so dishonoring to both.
Mm-hmm. And the last teaching that really hurts is also really dishonoring to men. It's a huge one, and it's the idea that all men struggle with lust as every man's battle. That's hugely destructive. That's one of the biggest reasons that women lose libido, is believing that or hearing that as a teenager. If it's every man's battle, and the authors of that book literally say that men just don't have that Christian view of sex, then what they're saying is that men were made inferior to women. Like there's something wrong with men that women need to fix. So women were created as sin management tools for men. That is not sexy, people.
Yeah, it's just not helpful.
And it's not biblical.
That's right. And you're really clear about that. I love to go back to what you were saying about that biblical idea of knowing, that not being a mistake. That same term of Adam and Eve knowing each other is the same term that David used to ask God to know me. I heard you say something to the effect of that kind of old evangelical framework in particular has turned sex from a knowing to an unknowing or an unseeing, especially of women. And I just think that's really profound. And that's part of why this book is touching a nerve in women, is that longing to be known and to be seen. I mean, what would you say to the woman listening, who has that longing? Where can they start to begin that journey?
Well, I mean, if we want to fix our sex lives, first of all, we need to believe deep, deep down, truly, truly believe that we matter because we've been told all kinds of messages that we don't. And sex will never be intimate unless we know that we matter, that we know that we can speak up, that we know that we can say, hey, I don't like this, or I do like this, or, I'm not really feeling it right now. We need to be able to speak up, but we can't speak up if we feel like we don't matter as much, or if we feel like, well, he's going to sin if I don't do this. That's not a healthy dynamic at all. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around whether or not sex contributes to intimacy because they're often used interchangeably, right? Like in sermons, when pastors are afraid to say the word sex, they'll say intimacy. That marriages need intimacy, they need physical intimacy, as if intercourse is automatically intimate. It's actually not. 16% of women reported that their primary emotion after sex is feeling used. That's not intimate. That means that for them, they would feel closer if they hadn't have had sex. And then there's others that may not feel used, but they don't feel good. There's a lot that really are not enjoying it, and it's not bringing them closer together. If their husband watches porn, if he has a pornographic view of sex, a pornographic way of relating, if sex is just shallow, then it's not going to make them feel more intimate. But a lot of men don't know how to share their feelings, don't know how to open up and be vulnerable. And so for them, sex seems like it provides connection without making them have to do the work of connecting. So they feel connected, but they're actually not. And I just think that we need to get away from speaking about sex as if it automatically is intimate, because it's not. And that's something that I think women need to hear, is that you're not alone if sex makes you feel lonely.
That's really good. Yeah, that's so important. And maybe don't start with sex as in the act of intercourse. Maybe start just back all the way up. Kind of to your point about dating when we're 17, what does it feel like to be sitting in the movie theater with your husband, and just start there, just almost back into that feeling of connection, of closeness, just back all the way up. We don't have to go right to let's make the sex great. It's almost like we have to re-tap into that innocence, that play that got lost somewhere along the way. That is well before the actual intercourse that flows naturally from that excitement and from those good feelings.
I think play goes away for very obvious reasons. So let's say you have a Christian couple, they want to wait till they get married, and they do, or maybe they might have had sex a few times, but it may not have felt that great, whatever. Okay. But they go into marriage not really experiencing great sex yet. And the first time they have sex, when we asked women to name the main word that they felt after their first time having sex, the most common word was bewildering. That's not a good word, okay? That is not a good word. But that's the most common one that we got. So, you have sex, you have intercourse, and it just wasn't what you thought it was going to be. But often he has a really good time. It feels good for him and he wants it again. He wants it to reassure himself that they're going to have a good sex life. He wants it because it felt good. And so maybe they keep doing this and it never feels good for her. And so she starts to believe, I'm just not sexual, because he wants it all the time. So he's obviously sexual and he orgasms really easily. So he must be more sexual than I am. And we forget we were just made differently. Like our bodies react differently, even just to stimulation or types of stimulation that we like, or types of stimulation that brings you to orgasm. When we asked both men and women, do you do enough foreplay, for instance? Okay. Like 96% of men and 88% of women say, yes, I do, or yes, he does, if she frequently reaches orgasm. But if she doesn't, 71% of men and 52% of women still say that he does enough foreplay. So that's over half of women think that he does enough foreplay, even if they're not reaching orgasm.
Interesting.
So what that tells me is that we've internalized the idea that we're broken. We're just not sexual. Because the first time you have sex, or the first few times, it works for him. And then his experience becomes the default. It becomes the norm.
Yeah, it works in one sense, in a very finite, tiny, limited understanding of works. But I hear what you're saying. The normalized message is that's what it is. It's working for him. It's not working for you. As opposed to it's actually not working for either of us in the fullness of how God intended it.
Yeah, because sex is supposed to be mutual, intimate, and pleasurable for both. That's the short form that we use all the time. And if he's the only one really enjoying it, then honey, you're the one being deprived, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And yet we use those verses against women so much, right? Do not deprive him. Look, if he's had an orgasm every week for 7 years and you've never had one, you're not depriving him by not having sex very often. You are so deprived. Or maybe you are reaching orgasm, but sex makes you feel used. You're still being deprived because sex, the way God intended it, is mutual and intimate and pleasurable for both. It's not merely intercourse.
Yeah, that's so good. Are you tired of searching for a skincare product that actually delivers on its promises? I've been there. Trying product after product labeled as clean or non-toxic only to find hidden ingredients or zero results. That's why I'm thrilled to share Purity Woods with you. Their mission is simple: to provide the cleanest and most effective healthy aging products on the market. Their products are USDA certified organic, non-GMO, free of artificial additives, parabens, and toxic preservatives, and they're completely cruelty-free. Their age-defying Dream Cream is a game changer. With revolutionary maple leaf extract and over 25 potent ingredients, it helps reduce fine lines, wrinkles, and age spots while supporting collagen and elastin production, all without irritation or drying. Turn back time on the appearance of your skin with Purity Woods Age-Defying Dream Cream. Right now, Purity Woods is offering 17% off site-wide, and we have an exclusive additional 10% discount for our listeners. That's a total savings of 27%. Go to puritywoods.com/bestofyou or enter code bestofyou at checkout for an additional 10% off your first order. That's PURITYWOODS.com and enter code bestofyou for a total of 27% off your first order.
Hey friends, I'm Annie F. Downs, author, speaker, podcaster, and part of the That Sounds Fun network. And I'm a big fan of seeing God move in our everyday lives. Can we talk for a second about what it really means to be a person of faith? It's waking up every day and choosing to trust Him, even when life feels uncertain. It's standing firm in truth, walking in grace, and knowing that God is always with us. But I know staying rooted in faith is not always easy. At least it isn't for me. And that's why I love Glorify, the #1 Christian devotional app designed to help you start, grow, and strengthen your relationship with God every single day. One of the things I love about Glorify is the amount of options available to me through the app every day. Not only does it help me kick off my time with God with their daily devotional, but there's a song of the day to listen to and a community of other users available to engage with. It's really cool. With Glorify, you can begin your morning in scripture, reflect with the daily devotional, and end the day with the daily walk with God, this immersive experience that quiets your heart and refocuses your spirit. It's one of my favorite hacks, something simple but powerful that keeps you anchored when life gets busy. And since we're shining a light on women this month, let's celebrate the strength, faith, and stories of women who inspire us every day. And for the men listening, think about how you're uplifting the women of faith in your life. Join me and over 20 million believers who have found encouragement through Glorify. Download the app today at glorify-app.com/podcast, and let's keep walking in faith together. Again, that's glorify-app.com/podcast.
You know, you go on to kind of these different pillars of sexuality. And again, it's a recasting. It's biblical messages recast in the mutual way that I agree with you that God intended. Sex should be prioritized. Both partners have to figure out how to prioritize it. Sex should be pressure-free. Sex is a gift that is freely given. Sex should put the other first. Both members of the partnership have to put the other first. Sex should be pure. Both partners have to take responsibility. Again, it just sounds so simple, but it's actually so revolutionary, especially for women. So I just really appreciate all the work you did on this and all the research to back it up. Any other findings that, we've touched on a couple of them that you think are really important for women to hear?
Well, this is actually a finding from our men's survey. So this one's from the book, The Good Guy's Guide to Great Sex. But I have some good news about pornography because we often hear bad news about pornography, and for a very good reason, because porn is super destructive in marriages. But what we found is that if a guy's been watching porn and he quits porn and he gets rid of the objectified view of women before he marries, he's pretty much going to have the same sex life as if he'd never watched it. So porn doesn't ruin your life forever. And I think that's important to hear because one of the problems with purity culture is that we told girls, hey, if you have sex before you're married, you've ruined everything. Well, I think we're doing the same thing today to both boys and girls who watch pornography. And, if you give it up and you get rid of the objectified view of women, you're actually in pretty good shape. Now, if you don't give up porn until after you're married, you don't necessarily get all of the intimacy and great sex you would have, but it's not that big a difference. Like, it's not like it's a huge difference. You can still have a really great sex life and a really great marriage. And I want people to hear that porn is something that an awful lot of people put behind them. An awful lot of people. But it isn't enough just to get rid of the pornography. You also have to address, why is it that you turn to it in the first place? What are you hiding from when you use it? If we're using porn as a self-soothing technique, which quite often people are to avoid boredom, worry, insecurity, shame, whatever, then what are you going to do in its place? How are we going to address those things instead? Because I think what happens often is people just try to white knuckle it. They say, okay, I'm going to quit. And that doesn't work because you have to look at the underlying things. But when people put the work in and when they do quit porn and quit the objectification of women and get rid of that obligation message, they really can flourish. And so it doesn't mean that it's over. Now, a big caveat there. If a guy says he's quitting, but he won't let you see his phone and he's not going to go to a counselor, he hasn't really quit. So I'm not trying to say that you should let all the husbands off the hook. I'm saying if he does the work.
Yeah. The way you're describing it reminds me of any sort of addiction model. I think about, I work in the internal family systems model. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, where there are 3 parts of us, right? And it is part of that firefighter, that self-soother, that escape artist that you do have to, I love what you're saying, replace with healthy pleasure, with healthy comfort. And so like anything like that you give up, if you just use willpower, you're not healing the vulnerability underneath, which is what leads to the intimacy. But I love that note of hope that it's so possible. And again, I love that distinction of the impetus to reach for porn isn't because the wife isn't doing her job. It's something broken or hurting that needs healing inside of you. And that's so important that can be healed and also that ownership is taken for it.
Yes, and please, pastors, if there are pastors listening to this, stop blaming women for men's porn use. It's just unbelievable how often people say, well, they wouldn't turn to it if the wife was doing more. The vast majority of porn use predates the marriage. They came into marriage already watching porn or using porn. So this isn't on her. This is a habit that he formed. This was a form of, self-soothing that he started. It's not on her. This is something else. Okay, big soapbox here. Sex and porn are not substitutes for one another. Because that's the insinuation, right? He wouldn't watch porn if he had sex with you. But porn is using. It is using for your own gratification. Sex is a deep knowing. Those are 2 opposite things. They're not substitutes, they're opposites.
That's so good, Sheila. The other thing I really like, there's just something I've heard you say that I just think is really beautiful. Again, it kind of gets at how we've located, whether consciously or subconsciously, right? Whether it's been intentional, whether it's just been a complete horrible oversight, we've located the problem in women's bodies. And so the other message that women have gotten is you're responsible for men's lust. And you say this thing that is so beautiful where in some cultures, men are taught, just don't look at the woman or don't be alone with the woman. And I love how you said this. You said the solution to men's lust is not to stop seeing women. It's to learn to truly see women. Jesus, you say, saw women. I love that. I just want the women listening to hear that. You're not the problem. Jesus sees you and knows you. And that is just so powerful. I love that.
Well, yeah, because this whole advice to men, to bounce your eyes, just don't look at women, that is seeing women in the same way that pornography does. So, they're told, hey, the way to beat lust and porn is to not look at women. But in both cases, you are seeing women primarily as a sex object. You're seeing her as a threat to you, a threat to your purity. And that's not how Jesus sees us. Yeah, Jesus didn't refuse to look at women. Jesus chose to truly see us.
Yeah, that's right. In our fullness, in our wholeness as a whole person.
The solution to lust is to learn to actually see women and not objectify, but learn to respect women. And that's what we need to be teaching our boys.
That's right. And which ironically then leads to that intimacy. right? That curiosity about who the whole person is that then will lead to down the road with the right woman, with your wife, the better sex if you're seeing her as a whole person.
Exactly.
I have one last question that I like to ask all my guests. Sheila, what would you say to the younger version of you, maybe however old she was, based on what you know now about this sexual journey?
Speak up sooner. I spent a lot of years, and like I said, sexual pain was a big part of my story for the first few years of marriage. And I pushed through because, I didn't want to deprive him. I wanted to be a good wife. I was afraid of all kinds of things. But speak up because you matter, I would say.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for your work to uncover a lot of these lies that have hurt so many women. And where can people find you and your work? And what do you have coming up next?
Yeah, so we are at baremarriage.com, so BARE, baremarriage.com. And I have the Bare Marriage podcast every Thursday. You can find links to, I write on my blog almost every day, and all my social media links are there. Instagram, Facebook are super fun. I do these Fixed It for yous on Instagram, which everybody loves. And then you can also find our orgasm course, our libido courses there, and the Great Sex Rescue, and our book, She Deserves Better. And then coming out this spring in March is our book, The Marriage You Want, which my husband and I wrote together based on our matched pair survey that we did last winter. And it's just going to turn the Christian marriage industry on its head, because it's not saying any of the typical Christian marriage stuff. It's just saying, hey, here's the stuff that actually matters. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to be such a healthy biblical book.
I love it. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you for giving us your time today. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate being here too.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That will ensure you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave your 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday. And remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.
Ever feel like the pressure to lead well is pulling you in 100 different directions? Like you're running on empty but can't afford to stop? I'm Tony Miltenberger, host of Follow to Lead, a Christian leaders podcast. And my mission is to help Christian leaders become more conscious and intentional, rooted in faith, grounded in values, and secure their identity in Christ. We do this every single week through interviews with some of the world's best leaders who share their insights on personal growth, resilience, and faith-filled leadership. Plus, I offer quick monologue episodes that cut straight to the core of the issues that you're facing every single day. Whether it's releasing control or leading through uncertainty, or just finding peace in the midst of the chaos. If you're ready to lead with clarity, confidence, and deeper connection to your faith, join me on Follow to Lead. That's follow the number 2 lead wherever you get your podcasts, or connect with me on Instagram at TWMill.
What if more important than being right is how we handle being wrong? Holding tightly to ideas that can't adapt with new information is not a virtue, it's a vice. I'm Heather Thompson Day, and I'm inviting you to join me over on my podcast, What If I'm Wrong?, where I'll be your guide through real life questions.
Okay, today we have a submission story, and it is wild.
Subscribe to What If I'm Wrong?, available wherever you listen to podcasts.